start in on the session.
Sweet.
Sweet. So, should we do exercises for like 30 minutes and then work on the project? Is that going to be our normal thing, you think?
I was going to suggest just that kind of pattern. I think will work out well.
I think so too. All right, so let's go back to our exercises.
Okay. What is your current background?
I can't remember. I think that's League of Legends. That's
Nice.
League of Legends with the new, what is it called? It's basically a Wrathy Basin with League of Legends. It's basically the same thing as World of Warcraft, the Wrathy Basin.
Gotcha. I think I mentioned League of Legends is kind of like where I start to feel myself getting out of the main gaming demographic. It's like at the limit of my I've tried to play it and I just can't.
It's so there's
my thing yet.
There's a large intellectual to play it well. There's a large intellectual investment that you need to make because you have to memorize all of the
hundreds of characters. And
you have to know all of them. You just have to know the top ones, and then you have to know all the items, and then you have to know all the placement of stuff on the map, and then you have to know the nuances of what to do at what part of the game.
It feels like relatable where when I was the kid and I had time to learn all the characters in Street Fighter and I could appreciate Street Fighter for what it is.
Yeah.
Versus now I'm just at a point where I'm just I can't get myself past the barrier for this game.
Exactly, and I think that there's also a thing. I was thinking this week about a couple of different games. I was like, I go to picnics a lot, and card games are not conducive to take to picnics because you're always worried about your cards being scratched up on picnic tables and other stuff. And I was like, man, there's just nothing in the dominoes realm that people have come out with that's specific for it doesn't matter. You can take dominoes anywhere. If they get jacked up, they don't really ever get jacked up. So
they're stones.
They're basically stones. Yeah, they're porcelain stones or ivory if you get those ones. But I digress.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. So just for some things in our scene, let's just throw in a cube. I don't remember if we didn't have a cube.
Yeah, we should have saved. I guess we didn't save.
Yes, we didn't. But if anything, I suspect we just had a cube with a ground and a script on it. Which, for practice, wouldn't hurt because that could probably be done a minute or so if you want to throw a cube in there, get a ground underneath it.
Yeah, we'll throw 2 cubes, right? Cube and another cube, and then we'll take cube 1. We'll call this one ground. And then we will make that -1 on the Y. Or 0, I guess, would work, right? No, I guess I need it lower than that. Oh,
I I'll often just kind of drag the green arrow first to get kind of an approximate location, and then I'll use that as a guide to figure out where I want to. So you see there, okay,
yeah,
looks like about -1-ish.
Yeah. So there we go, -1. All right, so there we go on the ground.
Make the ground a bit wider, probably on the X and Z axes. Do you want to do it with the scale tool?
Yeah, I mean, I just come over here and I can do it like that. But I like to. I don't know why I like exact numbers. I just do.
I'm the same. Well, and especially with the scale tool, it just feels so imprecise. You can't make something symmetrical.
So, especially when I'm making the types of games that, oops, what did I do? Oh, E. That's not a thing.
Nope.
I was trying to change my tool. That's what I was trying to do.
And if you want to go and color your ground as well, just as practice in how we do that.
So this will be the material. We should probably just create a new material. We've got a material here that's red. Let's go ahead and make a new material. Come over here, right click, create new material. And then we'll call this grass. I guess I can type it in here, grass.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like green grass. It's kind of in that range, kind of maybe a little bit darker, something like that. And then we can drag it on if we like. So
yeah, simplest way to sign it is just to put it onto the thing inside the scene's even easier in some cases, but this worked too.
That looks reasonable.
And if you press play, is your camera in an okay spot, or is it in kind of a uninteresting? Okay, so let's put your camera in a better kind of isometric looking angle.
Yeah, with the same view. So if I come over here and do, it's one of these. It's
under game object.
It's game object, and then camera.
Yep.
That will pull the camera up.
Well, so that's the camera, but you go to game object and then align with view. That's the one that puts it where your scene view is.
Yeah, let's kind of get our view set first. And
actually, you've created a new camera, which we didn't actually want to do. So you should delete your new camera. You'll see you still have the old one.
Just Control Z that, and then.
So you'll need to select your main camera. It needs to be selected in the hierarchy before you do the align with view, because that'll basically it can be used to move any object to where your camera is.
Oh, okay. And then align with view. All right. And now if I
there you go.
Play, then it's going to be a nice,
checking,
very free aspecty instead of whatever 16 by 9.
Constraints.
Yeah. If we wanted to, we could do that. Still looks kind of weird, but okay.
Yeah. All right, so let's start just putting a script on it. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a script that's going to turn the light on and off, and it's going to be a reason for us to practice using the less than, greater than stuff in the context of components, which is one place where we frequently will see it.
Scripts. So we'll use the practice one we've already got.
Sure. We totally could. Let's make a new different one, I suppose.
Okay. So we'll
let's just call this one light switch.
Light switch. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, switch. Oh, I guess I need to do script. New script.
You can actually, you can start typing it in and just, then there it is.
WITCH. Capital on the front. Yes.
Yep.
That's
for a class or an object or file.
Class,
and
object, file, method, whatever.
So now it's on there, so let's open it up. Method technically refers to the functions inside of a class.
Oh yeah, okay.
I typically just avoid the words and refer to everything as like, well, these are functions as opposed to distinguishing methods and properties and stuff, but there are.
Light switch. Light bulb.
And so all we're going to worry about in here is we want a way to turn on and off that light. And so to do that, let's make a public light in your variables up top.
Okay. Public boolean.
Just a public light. The actual type will be capital L light. We're going to make it a connection to a built-in Unity light. And then let's name it, and let's just say, like, the light or main light or overhead or something. This is going to refer to the
sun.
Sure. Or yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
And we can't define it here, so let's give it a semicolon. Now let's go and connect it in the inspector to your current directional light.
Okay. So update. Is it going to update? Oh, I had to save. Yeah. That would help.
And it takes it a second typically. There it is.
I was actually thinking about this recently this week. I was like, you know what? I bet you I could do a what do you call it? System, a day and night cycle system.
Totally. You can actually even have like the directional light kind of move overhead and fade to red as it gets near the horizon. We can totally work on that.
Yeah.
Inside update, let's do a key test. So let's make it so like when you press spacebar, it'll do something.
Okay, so we get key.
You have to if statement first.
Oh yeah, that's right. If.
And inside there, it's going to be on the input class.
Key. It's going to be on input. Input.
Yep.
Dot get key. Just get key, right?
Yep.
That's what we want.
Well, so get key down will tell if you just press the button. Get key will tell if you're holding it down.
Right.
Since it's like kind of a light switch, let's use get key down, so it'll only happen when the button gets pressed.
Okay. Get key down. Okay. Dot. And then we're using spacebar, so it'll be space.
Parentheses instead of a dot, because at this point we want to pass the argument. That's our function. And
space.
Key code dot.
Oh, key code.
Yep. Key code, because that's what the arguments are wanting for a key code. Yeah.
Space. Okay.
Yeah, and so now for now, just
complete it, and then I need to actually make it do something.
Yep. And for now, just debug log. Key pressed. Just print out the statement so we can tell it worked, and then we'll worry about getting to flip the light.
Log. Light switch activated.
Yeah, let's give it a test.
Okay, so it only works once.
Yep. Oh no, so it's if you'll see to the right of it,
oh,
it's just collapsing.
It's counting up because we.
And so if you click on, do you remember how to make that number expand?
The collapse. We turn that off.
Yes.
So now
there
we
you
can
go.
see it. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So let's now get it to flip that light to be disabled. First of all, do you have any guesses as to which you might try?
Well, I could simply get the component on the light, the directional light, and just turn off the light component on there. I could do that, right? Because I can access that on the game object light, right?
Yes, you can now. And in fact, so when we made the public reference to game object instead of when we made the public variable to light instead of game object, you don't actually have to do a get component because what we have is the component.
Okay.
And that's part of what we'll talk about today with the get component stuff. But so basically, your reference to sun is already the light component. And so if you typed in sun and dot, you would see a number of things you could do directly to the light component that would correspond to things about it. And do you know how you would disable it?
Change the color. It should be disabled, or enabled false.
Yes, that is certainly an option. Yeah, give it a shot.
Equals false. False.
2 equal signs won't work here, and do you remember why?
Because that's oh no, wait, that's an equality. That's not setting.
Yeah. 2 of them is always for comparison. Single one is an assignment.
Yeah, good catch. Save. Alright. So now we should be able to push this, and it turns the light off, and then everything gets really dark.
Yeah.
And I can't turn it back on yet.
Nope. So speaking of which, how could you change that statement so spacebar would flip it on or off? If it's off, it'll turn on. If it's on, it'll turn off.
We could. So I could use an and in here.
Totally good.
So and sun dot enabled is equal to true. It will go ahead and I can turn it off. Else I could just simply turn it on if I wanted to, right? I could just set it to true. I could set sun enabled to true, and that should work. Because if it's off or if it's on, then that means that's true, which means it'll just set it to false, which means it will never access the second part of the else statement. And then if it's off, it will skip the first part and then go to the else statement, which will just turn it back on.
So give it a shot.
So let's go sun dot enabled, set it equal to true, colon, file, save, and oh, it's going ridiculously fast.
Do you know why?
Let me think for a minute.
Sure.
So
what is your else statement really asking?
It's asking.
Let's think of it the other way. When will you be inside your if statement?
When I push get key down and this is true. Oh, this is setting it to true, which loops it back around to turn it off and then back on.
Well, so it's not really looping around so much as, remember, every single frame update's getting called, so like 30 times a second.
Right. And
so if it reaches that if statement and either your key is not pressed or the sun is false, sun enabled's false, either way, it'll the very next frame run to that else state. So for one frame you're flipping it, but for the very next frame either spacebar isn't being pressed that instant or the light's turned off, in which case it's immediately getting turned back on. So how can you test against that to block that from happening?
So do I need I think I need an else if here?
Yep, else if is certainly a way to do it.
Else if, and then let's go ahead and create a new thing, and then it would be sun dot enabled is equal to false.
Let's try it.
Alright. I feel like I need to actually stop my play button here anyways.
Yeah. Changing scripts is typically safe when it's in play, but as a good habit, you're right that you want to have it turned off before you make changes to stuff.
Yeah.
So there's still an issue.
Still an issue.
And do you know why? If you look at it again.
Okay, so I push the key and it has to be true, which it's automatic. It's already true. And it turns it to false. The key is still... Go ahead.
What's the relationship between the your else case and the key?
nothing right now. I don't have
Yeah,
the key in there, so I have to also add the key.
that's the way we're on it. So specifically, you can think of it as if your key is not being pressed this frame, because that's the only time that other function is going to return true, then your else case will get triggered. So any frame that your key is not just pressed this moment, it'll run your else case. So some way or another, you're going to need to block that with your spacebar as well.
I'm trying to think of how I would do this. I think I've run into this issue a lot lately, actually.
There's a few different ways to pattern, and one of it is you could actually make it look a lot like your first one, because
so input
you could separately be testing for it. We'll show another way you can kind of pull it out or separate it once we get that working.
down, key code dot space, and also, so both of these things need to be true.
Yep.
In order to get over here, and this is only going to activate once.
Yep. Well, because of the if else shape, it'll only hit one or the other.
Right. Okay. All right. So now it works.
Yeah. Now, one way you could kind of slightly simplify this, and there's actually a few different kind of steps we might take at it, is anytime you have like both of these statements are both asking the same thing,
Right.
you know, if A and B or A and C, you can actually pull that first if outside of them and nest these. So if your if else only checked sun enabled or not,
Right.
you could have an outer one that just checks if the key's down, then worry about either of these. Otherwise, don't worry about either one.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So let's go ahead and try that. Just, yeah,
right.
yeah. Just
I'm going to delete it later. I'm just going to keep it up for ease of reference. So if input dot get key down, then and key code dot space to those, and then we're going to go and execute the body here, and then we go ahead and throw an if. We nest an if it's going to be sun dot enabled is equal to
good catch.
Equal to true. Then turn it off. Sun dot enabled equals false. Set it to false.
Mm-hmm.
Else I'm trying to think if I can do this without having to do the else if. I think I can. Sun. I think it'll work this time.
And why do you say that?
Because only one of these can be true, and the key can only be checked once this way, and it's not being seeded the way it was before.
Yeah, because it used to be that, remember, your else case was being reached whether or not the key was being pressed. But this way, the only way that code's getting reached at all is if your key is pressed this instant.
One time.
Yep.
One time only.
And now, so even though you want to keep that one for reference, I would still at least comment it out just so it won't trigger both, because that would cause it to flip twice on you.
Let's do the
multi-line one.
The star, and then the star. No, we want it right here. Star, and then slash, and everything should be good. Looks like the compiler likes it, so that means I should hopefully like it. Oh, now the compiler may not like it. No, it looks like it's okay. I think it's okay. Let's find out. Yes.
Nice. There you go. Now there is a smaller way to write it still. There's a few things we can do. One thing is just a reminder on line 17. You have an equals true and an if statement.
So let me set my view up so it's a little bit better for you.
Sure.
Zoom in twice is usually good.
That helps. Thank you. On line 17, it has enabled equals true. implicitly everything in an if statement is always checking equals
So
equals true.
if it's if that's all I need to do is just say
Yeah, you can just say if sun's enabled. Now, the other thing here is that because we're sort of setting it to the opposite of whatever it was, we can actually do this on a single line. We don't actually need to use an if-else for it. And that's because, so what if you wanted to set it to what it already is? Right, you could say sun enabled equals sun enabled. Not that that's useful, we could say that. We could assign it to what it currently is. So if we want to set it to the opposite of what it is...
Not, right. So it would look something like, so sun dot enabled. Set that equal to pound, or bang. Whatever, sun dot enabled, colon. And that should work. Also, so multi-line comment, and multi-line comment. This is kind of where you get into your like elegant code type of thing, right?
A little bit, or at the very least, it's the sort of thing
readable.
That yeah.
I did actually start reading the what you sent me last week, and it does actually have the Gang of Four in there. So
oh, good.
Yeah, that's like one of the first things he talks about. Most of what he was talking about was like not necessarily because it looks good, but so that way it can be readable. Like at the very beginning, he talks about how he says, and I didn't even think about it like this, like 60 or 70% of what you do when you're coding is trying to figure out what the code does first, and then you're actually putting in code to change what it does.
And this is especially true for, of course, if you're working on a team of people, if you're working on software that existed before you got there. So they're the kind of things that don't happen as badly when you're on your own project. Now, it's still a problem, of course, like if you're doing something across months, you have to make sense of what you wrote a month ago or 2 months ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's especially an issue where you come onto a team, other stuff exists, and like you said, you got to make sense of what's there to react and respond to it correctly in a way consistent with it. But yeah, so this
is pretty sweet.
This is a shorter light switch.
Okay, so we've got that built.
Now, so one of the things I want to talk about too is how to use get component. So in this case, we grabbed the light directly off the object. But what if we didn't have a reference to the light and we wanted to do something else to it?
Should we start a new script?
I think, well, let's actually keep this in the same one, because what we're going to do instead is let's comment out public light sun on line 6.
Okay.
Because what we're going to do instead is let's make a public game object under it. No period. Public is a specifier, game objects the type. And then let's call this has light.
Lowercase, camel case properly.
Yep.
Proper camel casing is key.
Yeah. Alright, and so now inside line 19, what we'd like to do is we want to be able to get the sun off of the object has light. So the idea here is that if we save this, well, let's comment out line 20 just because otherwise it's going to be mad at us for a second. So we'll comment that out, save it, and if you go back to your inspector,
we gotta re-add a new component to our...
Yeah, we gotta connect it to the cube, and you'll see, so it says has light game object.
Yep.
When you drag your directional light onto it, so now this is no longer a reference to the light component of it. When we made the type light and you dragged it to it, it specifically got the light component off of it.
Right.
Now we just have the whole game object. We need to get that light component off of it in order to turn it on and off.
Okay.
And so on line 19, you can say light capital L. And let's colloquially call it here sun. So space sun, just as that's the name we've been using before, equals. And so here's where you've seen the less than greater than's most often. If you say has light dot get component, it's going to be outside those yet. We're not going to. We don't need those just yet. But those are going to very soon. Has light camel case dot get component, and get component can be called on any game object. You see, there's a lot of forms, but often we'll use a singular.
Right.
So here's where we do the less than.
It's not a dot though, right?
Nope, no dot, just less than.
Do people typically put a space here?
Nope. No, it's typically all kind of run together in this case. Okay. Then light.
Light, which is right over here, the actual component that's on it.
Yep,
Right.
which is and it's also you can look at all the way on the left of the line. It's the type we want out of this, and then parentheses, open and close parentheses, semicolon.
Right, because that would be the that would encompass everything on here, right? The parentheses. So
Well,
like
so the parentheses are just because it's a function.
it's a right. Okay.
And so with this less than greater than it's doing, actually, and if we uncomment line 22, like this should now work. We should now be able to flip this light on and off. Where we didn't give it a reference to our light at the top, we gave it a reference to the whole game object. But whenever you press the key, it's fetching the light component off of it, and then you can modify it just like as if you had a public reference to it.
Right. Okay. So I'm making the sun here, is what's happening. It's the same thing.
Or you're sort of grabbing a copy of it or a reference or handle to it.
Right. So come in here. And, yep. Works again.
Yeah. And now, so in that get component case, the reason why we have to see the less than greater than there, and we don't see in most other cases in programming, is because in most functions we know what we want back from it. Like in get key down, we know it's going to give us a true or false. But in this case, get component, what it returns depends on what we're trying to grab. If we need a light, it's going to return a light. If we need a rotation script, it's going to get a rotation script. And so that's the reason why we have that less than greater than, is because we have to give it a clue as to what kind of thing it's supposed to return. And it's why also we don't usually see those elsewhere. So as another example is, if we put like another script on the light, let's make the light spin, for example. That's another kind of practice deal. If you put a new script on the light itself. Okay,
let's go ahead, let's go new script.
And let's just call this a disco spin or something, because it's going to be a little trippy.
Spin. Create an ad.
Okay. And so inside there, first of all, would you know what to do in your update function to just get it to keep spinning any way you'd want, just to make it spin?
That would be rotation, set rotation, or it would be game.
First
object.
of all, what's the part of the game object that has the position, rotation, and scale information?
Transform.
Yep. So it's your first part.
So that's just straight up transform, not like
transform,
set transform or anything.
Nope. So yeah, because transform is a reference to that component on this thing.
One that's already on there. Okay.
So one specifically that the script is on this game object with. And so now if you look inside there.
So I could say rotate.
Rotate's probably the easiest form to use. Yep.
Yeah, and then I basically can set it in here.
And so in this case, I would actually, even though it's sort of as an old programming habit, it's handy sometimes to close your parentheses before you type the contents of them. In Unity, that makes it harder for you because you don't get the tool tips for like what possible arguments are.
Okay.
When you so if you backspace over that one too, and you open a new one, open parenthesis, and so now we can actually use up and down to browse which one of these forms of rotate we want to use.
So we want to use
the few forms of it. I find version 5 kind of the simplest to think about, and that's just where it just wants what amount to spin on each axis, around its x-axis, its y-axis, and its z-axis.
Right, and we're spinning on the y-axis, so it'll be 0, and then I guess we can do like 10.
Sure. Although, whenever you're in update and you're moving or rotating something, what can you do to make sure it's frame rate independent?
10, and then what is it called? Or wouldn't I do? It's
10 times time dot something.
Time dot.
You can check the time dot.
Time.
Yeah, there you go. You dropped the times between them, which is why it's a little confused on the autocompletes. 10 times. 10 asterisks time dot dot.
Yeah, like multiplication.
Well, and also I realized saying times time might have been a
delta time.
Yep.
0.
And then yeah.
There.
Alrighty, and let's just see if that does what we expect so far.
So we should see the shadow. Yeah, very slowly. Yep, there it goes.
Okay, so now what we'd like to do is let's make a public Boolean value on your...
It's too much fun to watch.
Let's make a public Boolean value on your disco light to turn on and off whether it's currently spinning.
Okay.
and let's just call it motor on or something.
Spinning.
Sure. I often,
is spinning.
there you go. Yeah, I was going to suggest exactly that.
Okay. And
let's give it a default value.
Set it to true.
Sure.
Okay, and then we're going to wrap up the transform.rotate with an if-then statement. So it'll be if is spinning, because that's already saying whether it's true or not. And then
and this is actually part 2 of what's nice about using that convention of starting it with if or is, because this statement now makes sense. If is spinning.
Spinning is true. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it also avoids us. Otherwise, there's sometimes a habit of using like booleans in a negative way, where you might think of it like not spinning or something, and this gets very messy to try to reason through that logic.
So here we are. It's defaulted true. It's a component on the light. So if I come back over to cube and we already have a handle to the light, then I just need to access that handle with my spacebar instead of turning it off and on. Stop the is spinning. Correct?
Sure. Yeah. That's certainly something we can do. Although, so first, I'd say just test your new boolean in the inspector. So press play, and then try directly flipping on your disco light. Can you turn on and off its rotation by clicking the checkbox? Yeah. Just the is spinning. So not the whole disco spin script. Yeah, just that one boolean variable. Yep, and that's separate from you can turn on and off the light, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Although I realize it's a little tricky once it kind of turns its way all around.
Yeah, it's turning its way around too far there. Maybe it'll come. It should come back.
That's true.
If it doesn't seem to be.
It might take a little while.
It looks like it's spinning all the axes. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, it does seem to be rotating in
a very weird way. Let's actually look at it in the scene view.
Oh, it's rotating around its Y. That makes sense.
Oh, so I need to set it to a global Y.
So now, unfortunately, that's let's take a look at where that's happening in the script. That can be a little. There's basically another form of the function we're going to use to do that. If we look at that rotate line.
Let's go ahead and get rid of that. That's from my other. This is from the other stuff.
Right on.
Okay, so here we are on the light. We need to figure out a way to talk to the script telling it global Y.
Oh, so that's going to be actually on disco spin. Disco spin's where it's worried about that.
Okay.
And so I think actually there might even be another form of rotate that takes a fourth argument. If you'll put a comma after that piece, then does it? Let's see if we kind of browse through these Euler. But let's just look up and down. Yeah, relative to. That's the form we want. And so here you see space relative to is a form it can give it. So let's say space dot.
This one, space?
Yep, space dot worlds. We'll tell it to use, universal coordinates instead of personal. It defaulted to local. So now if we try it again, the light should hopefully pivot around the top. And that was a good idea to check it in the scene view so you could see it spin better. If you click on that,
and I can see the Z and the Y changing, and the X is staying still, and yeah, it definitely looks.
Although Z is changing very, very minutely, right? I mean, so that E implies that these numbers are tiny, and it looks like it is indeed kind of spinning as we'd expect.
Yeah, that's what we wanted. For now. I mean, we'll do a different kind of a spin angle when we do the other game, but
yeah,
we might have it spin end over end.
Let's also speed up the speed of that spin just a bit, so it's a little easier to tell when it is or isn't spinning. Because right now it's a little subtle.
So let's make a public variable.
Sure, that'd be a good idea for tuning it easier.
Public, and we need what do you call it? It's not a. It's
you
not
can
an
always
integer.
Start typing it. You know it starts with an F, and now you can look them down in the menus, and it'll give you an option. Maybe it'll there you go.
Yeah,
yep.
So we need a public float, and this will be spin rate.
And just to say, despite having been programming for many, many years, I'm still where I'm like, okay, I know it starts with an F or whatever. Like maybe not for float, but for some of these functions where I'm like, I know I need to transform out something, and it's just part of programming. Now you put the period there, you look for it,
and this will change into spin rate.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's fine, right? That should be
Yep.
fine.
Totally look good.
File, save. Now
Although, so now in the inspector, you should juice that number just because that was our reason for exposing it. So instead of 10, and it's going to be on the disco light itself.
make it 25. Double and a half.
Yeah.
Double and half.
That looks easier to tell.
Yeah, it's much better.
Alrighty. So now let's, like you were saying, let's make it so that other script, let's give it a separate key that can turn on and off the spin of the disco light.
Okay.
And
so
it'll
we'll
just
do
be a
new
reason
one.
to. Yep.
So if input dot get key down, and then we'll go with key code dot I don't know, A is fine, I guess.
Sure. No right answer here.
For now, yeah. We
Yeah.
can always change that to something else later. Then we are going to stop the spin, so we need to access it. So first of all, like, we have a sun variable here, but this is a local variable, so we have to create the variable again.
Yes, so there's a couple ways you can go about doing it. First off, we could check it here, and you're right, but you're right to be suspicious. And it's partly because every time we do these get components, it's not the end of the world, but they're a little more expensive than we'd like to do a lot, if we can avoid it. And especially because this is always going to grab the exact same sun reference. What's going to make more sense is if we save this once on our object. So like, let's create a private light up on line 8 or 9 or so. We typically will list privates after publics. And let's make a private light. We can call it sun. And then what we'll do is, instead of doing it right when we press the key, let's take line 22, or it might even be good practice just to practice kind of writing the relevant portion in void start, so that when our game starts, it's going to grab the sun reference off its object it has a game object reference to. And now the one other thing is that this line, there's still something wrong with line 15. Do you know what it is?
Has light, probably, or which?
Toward the left side.
Light. Sun.
Yeah.
Just sun. We already have sun.
Exactly. If we say light before it, it actually creates a
Another
local
one
within the context of start, and it wouldn't actually set the private light.
That does nothing for us, yeah.
Yeah, that's a common source of bugs. Yeah, and so now this way, it's only grabbing the component light once when the program starts, keeping it so you can then use it in either one of these.
Okay. So we say sun dot get.
Specifically, you want to change that spinning variable, right?
Right. So is that spin?
Is
spinning.
It's a Boolean. Although interesting that we're not seeing it. Oh, and that's because it's not on the sun. It's not on the light. It's on a different component, right?
It's on the disco spin.
Yeah, so somewhere you're going to need to grab that component. You could so here's a point.
Directional light, okay.
So you have a reference already to this whole game object.
Uh-huh.
But you're going to need to grab that disco spin component in order to set the spinning variable on it, because it's not the same component as the light one. And so here's where you could do it as a private, or you could do it locally right here. Totally up to you. It's just kind of either place, but you'll need a reference to it in order to change that variable on it.
Okay. So sun dot get component dot
No dot.
no, and then the actual
Type it's looking for
is spinning.
So you can look at line 15 as sort of an example, where it's after get component, then we use the less than greater than notation to say what kind of component we want from it. So which component is it that is spinning on it?
Directional light.
Nope. So directional light is the
it's sun.
Nope. So if you you can actually look, it's on the right side of your screen in the inspector. In the first case, we grabbed the light.
Disco spin.
Yeah, you want the disco spin.
Disco spin.
Greater than.
And then dot
empty parentheses always after these because it's the get component's still a function. It just needed to know what to look for.
Okay. So
And this is part of too why we don't usually put the space between get component and the less than, just because it further helps solidify that template notation is part of their function.
Okay.
And so you'll need to either save a reference to that because it's going to return your disco spin, or you could actually put a period at the end of that and change your is spinning that way. So if you put like a period there, and look for there's is spinning, because that's already giving you your reference to your disco spin component.
Right. So I could set that equal to pound, and then the same whole thing,
Or
right?
bang.
Bang. I mean,
Yep.
yeah. And then the whole
Although, so because this would be the exact same thing, yeah, I didn't go in. I'd say do it first.
so that would work.
So this will work, and the only downside here is that this is grabbing the component twice, which, as we just mentioned, is kind of like
Bad.
it's not super cheap to do
It's
for the
not
code.
optimal.
So if nothing else, let's get it once above and save a reference to it. So on the previous line, you're going to need to give it the name of the component you want to grab, or the component type. What's the name of your script you want to grab?
It's disco spin. So
Yep.
disco spin dot get component.
No dot.
And
So
then
disco spin here is the type. It's just like we did a private light sun.
Right. So.
And so now you're going to get no parentheses either. So disco spin's our type. So give it a space, and now I have to give it a name for what's the name of this disco spin locally. The spin, spinner, spin
okay.
script, something, whatever you like.
The spinner.
And so now here,
So
you
I'm
can
making
set.
a variable.
Yep, you're making a variable, and the type is the script we want to grab a reference to.
So then
so
I
now-
do that sun dot get component.
Although here's where you will need the equal sign between them, because this is now setting that variable.
And disco spin. Dot is spinning.
So here
Now
you
I wouldn't have to do this because once
Yep.
I've got disco spin, I've got it.
yes,
right?
there
So
you
I
go.
can do that. That way I can access all the components on it.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise, I'd only have access to one.
Well, you couldn't even actually. At best, you'd be copying the Boolean value there, but it wouldn't be a reference to the whole disco spin component. But so with line 31 got you, is you can now write line 33 a lot easier.
Right. So now I can say the spinner
Yep.
is spinning,
Yep.
or is true or not true. Basically, I can set
Yeah.
it to whatever it's not.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the spinner.
And then same story on the right side.
The spinner. Save.
And now, so as one other really minor thing, but in line 31, you're grabbing the disco spinner from the sun, from the light component.
Right.
And
So-
theoretically, you can do that. Any component, you can use get component to get us like what I'm going to call a sibling component for it. But it might make more sense to grab it off haslight, which is like the top level game object.
okay.
Just because otherwise we're sort of like using indirection. We're being like, give me the light, and then give me the disco spinner off the light.
Right. So has. Let's see. So
Instead of sun.
instead of just trade those out. I'm trying to see how that actually works.
Well, so again, we can look in the inspector on the right. So haslight is a reference to the whole directional light, right?
I think that's on the cube.
Well, yes, but I mean, but directional light is the object we're connecting to haslight.
Right.
And so because of that, if you look at directional light in the inspector, the light component and your disco spin are sort of sister or sibling components.
Okay.
If you look on the directional light,
Right. It's still, yeah, I see. It has this selected, and then it has that.
but I mean, so when you click on directional light
Right, and it highlights.
in the hierarchy, we want to view that in the inspector. So you'll see how light and disco spin are both scripts on the directional light.
I see disco spin. I don't see light on here.
So light's the first one listed. So you've got transform, light, and disco spin are your three components on
Oh,
directional
light is this. Okay, this.
Yeah, that whole chunk there is the light.
Okay.
And so what was happening was you were in your start function grabbing the light component from directional light, and then you were getting your disco spin from the light, which like you can do, but it results in this extra dependency in your code where if you later, let's say, decide to remove your light for some reason, but keep your disco spin around, it would break disco spin because it was getting it via your sun, via the light component, as opposed to kind of from the top level, it's really dangling directly off of directional light. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And so if we test that, that should now A key and spacebar key should have separate effects on your light.
Yeah. There you go. A key is doing that, and then turn it off. Turn it on. Sweet.
Now, so as another example of using get component, just for kind of one more case, because I know that's part we're really focusing on today. If you put on your cube a disco spin script.
It should just spin the cube also.
Yep, for now, and then we're gonna grab a handle to it with a get component, and we're gonna change something about it. So you're not creating. Yeah, you can do it that way. That'll work. Okay, and maybe give it a negative spin rate just for kicks, so it'll spin the other direction.
Okay, so we'll say negative.
Maybe like crazy fast, just for sport.
50.
Yeah,
50.
Computer doesn't even care. Doesn't cost us any fuel.
Yeah, that's crazy fast right there.
Yeah, crazy. That's right.
It's crazy.
Throw a few zeros after it. You know, why the heck not? Like I said, it costs the universe nothing to make that number, 200,000. There we go. Now we're talking. Free energy. All right. Of course, when you press play, you're going to lose that change because that's in the inspector.
Right.
But, oh well. So if you press play, so it'll stop the action.
Oh, okay.
And we're back to negative 50.
5,000.
There you go. The more important thing, of course, for our purposes, we can tell when it is or isn't going. Now, of course, we can set the spin rate in script. So let's do that. So let's go to where your script is. That's on the cube itself. Which, remember, you have this light switch script. And here, let's do another 2 key checks. Let's do a check for up arrow and down arrow.
Okay. So if input now I guess it's just gonna do that dot get key down, or just get key because we want to be able to persistently have it down.
Sure. Yeah, that seems reasonable.
And we're gonna go
Catch.
Key value, key code.
Yep.
Dot, would it be like arrow? It would be right arrow. Do right and then we'll do left. So basically if that's depressed, then execute
Yep.
the body, and then we can copy that and do left just to save time.
That's right.
So we could do left, LEF. Okay, and so
Okay, so now,
go ahead.
in these 2 cases, so we're going to want to grab the disco spin script off the same game object the script is on. So, right, this is different from we've been getting it off of haslight. We've been getting it from this other game object. Now we want to get one from the script that we are already on. This is now a sort of sibling component of light switch.
So it's just using game object, right?
Yep. So you could say game object. You could say disco spin, my spinner.
Lowercase game object, or is it uppercase? Because it's the same.
It's lowercase. So lowercase is this specific game object. Capital G game object is like the abstract definition of game objects.
Okay. Dot, and we say disco spin.
Got a get component.
Dot get component.
Yep.
Dot.
No dot.
Or a,
the reflexes still always put that dot in there.
The dots get used a lot, so
They do. That's fair.
we want to do disco spin. Okay. So it's starting to light up for me now in my brain.
That's right. What goes next?
We have to do that. Have to.
Bingo.
Okay.
Now there's still another thing you should put on that line though. You should save a reference to it, right?
Right. So we want to set it equal at the beginning. So to something.
Yeah.
So,
otherwise, it's like like asking a question and not doing anything with the answer.
Right. So we are going to call this right spin rate. Or actually, we got to call this a game object, or not a game object. No, just being.
What type of thing do we get back from get component disco spin?
We get. Well, we can either get the on off, or we can get the number, the spin rate. So it would be the spin rate.
What we're really getting here though is we want the disco spin itself.
Oh.
So then we can directly manipulate the values on it. And so remember,
a game object.
So not a game object, but a disco spin. So it's just like on line 31, where the actual type here is the name of your script.
Okay.
And again, this is whenever we use that template notation, it's because what we're going to get back from it is that type, that script.
Okay. So,
and so this might call this like spin self or something, just to distinguish from the other way we're using it.
Spin right, spin self right, I guess. And then set it equal to, so just equals, not double equals.
That's right.
And then, so we've got it, we've got a handle to it, and now we're going to get the component inside of it.
Well, so we're not getting component inside it. That is the component, but we're going to modify a variable on it.
The spin rate, right? We're modifying the spin rate. So
in fact, for now, let's just slam the brakes on it, because that's going to be the most obvious change to one that's going negative 50K. So how would you instantly stop the spin when you press the right arrow?
Set it to 0.
Sure.
So that would be spin self right dot spin rate, set it equal to 0 colon. That should work. So oops, and hit the right. And boy, maybe it's.
Did you click? Have you clicked inside your game view, by the way?
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that's part of the catch. Your keyboard has to be sort of in focus on that pane.
Yeah, so we did stop it, set it to 0. So there you go.
Great. So now, so again, one of the things that we want to look at though is that using get component, we certainly don't want to do it every single consecutive frame. And in this case, every frame you're holding down the right arrow, it's going to be grabbing another get component. So let's do the same thing we did earlier. Let's make a private one, and we'll save this my spinner. So let's do it at the top level of the class, outside of the update. Anything we do inside update is going to be lost the moment update's done.
Right.
But we do it a private variable up there, right where we did kind of private light sun.
So this will be.
I would first declare the variable before using it and start, just for sort of the order of operation here. At the very top.
Okay. Set. So private. We're calling this spin.
So this will need to. You first have to say the type. What type of thing you're going to store?
Which
reference?
Is disco spin.
That's right.
And then it is spin self right.
Although I might take the right out of it because we're probably going to use the same one for the other arrow too.
So we just call it spin self.
Sure.
Okay.
And set it inside start.
So spin self is equal to disco spin dot get component.
So there's no disco spin dot here yet. Disco spin, remember, is the name of the script. It's the name of that. It's the type of the component. But what you're getting the disco spin script off of.
Cube.
No. So if you can actually look down below where you're currently getting the component, where you do the spin self right equals which. How are you getting it there?
Game object get component disco spin.
Yeah, because we want the disco spin script off of ourselves.
And then Okay. And then now that we have spin self, I can use that right here.
You can actually get rid of that entire line.
This whole line is, yeah, it's because it's already been.
And so now you're going to have to update that line 43 to use your new variable name.
So this should just be spin self.
Mm-hmm. And then under the left arrow, let's have it speed up or slow down or otherwise do something else to that spin rate besides zero it out. Plus equals.
Plus equals, yeah. Oops. I guess, yeah. Plus equals spin self.
So I would just make it a constant in this case. So plus
1.
Sure. Now, so although this is an update, so you should make that times time delta time. Anything that we add or subtract in time in update will be frame rate dependent unless we use time delta time. And as one other minor change, right now instead of zeroing out the speed on line 43, just because we already have a way we could turn off the spinner, let's instead have this grind down the speed. Do you know how we would like shave off 30% every frame?
Or that would be take it times.
Yep, it's gonna be a times equals.
Times. So times equals 0.3.
So that would actually shave off 70%. Because when we times equals, because if we times equal like 1, it would be 100%. Yeah, so this would take 30% off every frame. Now,
delta time.
Now this so we can't actually do time delta time here. This is actually a reason this would be frame rate dependent, but for our purposes here, it's going to grind it down very quickly. We could, if we wanted, if we wanted to keep that function around, we'd stick it in fixed update, which happens a known number of times per second. But for now, we just wanted to slow it down drastically, and we'll just sort of let that details slip away for the frame rate dependence on that one.
We have an issue. Does not like a float here.
Oh, F at the end. Anytime you've got, yeah. Otherwise, so it's looking for what it thinks is a double by default, which is twice as precise, and games typically don't need to work in doubles. Only kind of special math situations where we worry about that level of precision. And does one key grind it down really quickly to a stop, and then the other key speeds it back up?
The other one's going. It's going to speed it up. I'm holding it.
It's just very slow.
Maybe I have to like hit it multiple times.
So remember, your mouse has got to be inside. You got to click in game in order to have your key focused. So we're seeing it increase. It's just increasing very slowly. So how would you increase the speed at which it's increasing?
Change the number.
Yep.
In the script.
Yeah, so go and just revisit that. And you may not. You could open up a public. You don't necessarily have to. You could just change that 1 there to.
Let's change it to 10. Yeah,
10 times the effect. I suspect will be noticeable.
Numbers become so arbitrary when you're trying to transfer them to actual like workable objects sometimes.
Oh yeah. When it very much just becomes kind of just a guess and check kind of thing for a lot of these things.
Yeah, it's like what feels right.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Hopefully that was good familiarity with kind of what that get component stuff's doing, which is most of the time when we see those less than greater than. The other situation being when we have a list.
Right.
Now the one other sort of detail I wanted to point out, and it's a sort of an optional thing. It's actually I prefer to do it the way we're doing it here. But where you're getting a component off of itself, so where you set like self disco spin or whatever self spin, technically on line. Your second line of start, where it says self spin self equals game object dot get component, you can actually drop the game object dot there and just say spin self equals get component, and it implies it's doing it on the local game object to itself.
Okay.
I prefer to keep game object in front of it because it's a little more explicit about who am I getting this off of.
Yeah, I think I do too. Yeah.
But I like to point that out. So if you see other example code and they don't have it there, you understand like that's the exact same thing.
Yeah, this is super educational this week. This is going to be ridiculously helpful.
Sweet. And hopefully it demystifies some of, if you will crawl through some of the code we've got as to like, oh, I see. That's what all these get components are doing.
I know, like, I can kind of, like, figure out what a get component does. A lot of it's syntax, and then, like, it's like, oh, what do I, like, knowing that, like, for instance, that there's no dot here, but this is basically like saying dot light is what this is really kind of saying. It's just accessing it off that object. It's referencing the object, and then the components get referenced off of that.
I might think of it, instead of thinking of it as a dot, I might think of it as like another name for a function. So like what, because this is kind of saying get component light, where like if that was one function name, where it was a specially designed function that returns a type light, or get component disco spin was a different function that specifically returns disco spin. It's really kind of an extension to the name, but it's one that we're allowed to fill in instead of it having to be coded into the function itself.
Right. Yeah, I was also thinking about a new script that I think we're going to want to add to the combat. I guess we can look at Trello real quick because they're basically out of time.
Sure.
We'll try to do some actual game stuff next week, but